So, as you all know, I'm 100% behind ranked choice voting, or instant runoff voting, which have some minor differences, but for the sake of explanation are the same damn thing, and I have founded a group nearby to promote, as I have done in the last 2 states I lived in. However, for the first time 2 months ago, a person online, and then a mathematician I briefly bumped into, both smugly said that thanks to math, no election system was fair, and Arrow's theorem proves this, when it comes to ranked choice voting. The first person to say that all voting is evil, and the second was to dismiss my group as silly and pointless, so don't bother. So Arrow's theorem. I don't get how it proves ranked choice voting isn't fair, and perhaps that is because I have a different set of criteria for a good election system. And I don't see election systems as popularity votes and about the candidates themselves, as much as about the ideas and the will of the people getting represented. The premise of Arrow's theorem is he states his 3 requirements for a voting system to be fair. 1. If every voter prefers alternative X over alternative Y, then the group prefers X over Y. If every voter's preference between X and Y remains unchanged, then the group's preference between X and Y will also remain unchanged, even if voters' preferences between other pairs like X and Z, Y and Z, or Z and W change. Number 3, there is no dictator or single voter who possesses the power to always determine the group's preference, because they just happen to be in the middle and will shift based on their own preference. This might be what's messing me up, because as a biologist I think in gradients, and not as much in discrete numbers, and I think of organic change, not hard and fast change. I don't have a problem with a little bit of chance being involved with who the actual person leading is. If the ideals are somewhat average of the population, or the person is at least someone that the majority can live with. The definition of a good compromise is one where everyone comes away unhappy, but they can at least live with people completely opposite to them in ideology, especially if they get a chance in a few years to go back to the negotiating table and try again after trying this compromise for a while. Perhaps it's the two-party system itself that's created the black and white clear winning individual versus winning idea that adjusts things. All anti-ranked choice videos you will see involve using 3 choices you are allowed to rank, which can skew the numbers a bit. That is why 4 choices are allowed when there are more than 3 people, because it creates much more fairness. Perhaps it's also that I don't believe in the great man myth, and I believe a large chunk of people can do the job possibly better than the ones who win a popularity contest. Arrow's theorem proves that ranked choice voting fails to provide one of the 3 criteria he states. It creates what he calls a dictator, where thanks to the gradients of the votes, one person in the very middle can decide the outcome of the election. I don't really get why this so-called dictator is a bad thing, as A, the dictator doesn't know that they're the dictator and have 0 corruption by power going to their heads, and B, all people voting also voted for that dictator indirectly to cast the deciding vote. And if one more or less person voted, that would shift who the dictator and the gradient slightly one way or another was, meaning your vote counts even more than in probably every other single voting system. People claim that in some rare cases a person who could beat all of their candidates in a head-to-head first-past-the-post may lose in a ranked choice voting race. And that, in my opinion, is the point of ranked choice voting, because I don't want an election to be a popularity contest. I want the best ideas to win out, and thanks to Duverger's law, in the first-past-the-post, you will only get 2 viable people with a mesh of ideas to vote on, and anyone who walks into the race with slightly different views, leaning slightly one way or the other, will help ensure the less popular views win. So I'm not a math guy, and perhaps I'm getting Arrow's theorem all wrong, and he's actually disproving everything I said. I'm suspecting I just don't think his premise is valid, and he's talking about an individual popularity contest and not an idea contest. And while ranked choice voting may not be fair to a person, it is very fair to the people who are voting. So please look at it and see if I'm just clueless and not getting it, or if Arrow and I just completely agree on philosophical views as to what makes a good election best for the people.